Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Lisa Love, and this is a continued series on Revelation and Esoteric Look, Part 4, The Dragon. So, Revelation is a book in the Christian Bible that is thought by traditionally exoterically minded Christians to predict the end times. And the book is divided into 22 chapters. And throughout thousands of years, people have looked for these end times to come. But could it be that these end times are always here? Might the themes in Revelation repeat themselves over and over again? This video series makes that case, showing how Revelation is a symbolic teaching that is easily deciphered by those who understand its esoteric meaning of revealing the war between material and spiritual values that each of us must apply to our everyday lives. So, the exoteric approach, let's start with what that is. It is basically a focus on the outer world of the five senses. In other words, I get up every day and my focus is out there. Now, I may at times pray and that kind of a thing, but in general, I'm focused on my life out here. Whatever I see, hear, taste, touch, and smell is what's most important to me. And the idea is, as I look out there, is to have domination or dominion over that earth. And this feeds the idea of selfishness and separation, because it's who gets to have that dominion or domination that becomes the quest, even the spiritual quest. And that creates a world of separation. He versus she, one race versus another, one world view versus another, and it destroys unity. This belief also falsely believes in a material reward system, either here, because the most spiritual people are going to be able to get the most money, security, sex, pleasure, and power. And in fact, if you've got that, it's proof that God gave it to you instead of your own selfish, ignorant tendencies or exploitive tendencies. And it can also believe in a material reward system somewhere else. You know, if I didn't get the goodies here, maybe I'll get them in a heaven somewhere else. This view can glorify the destruction of the earth, because it doesn't matter. You'll either get your goodies somewhere else or you'll get your goodies here if you are able to be competitive enough, or to get rid of the people that aren't spiritual or are your enemies if you're secular, whatever. Just get your stuff and don't care about what happens to the earth or really other people, which is easy to do if they're not in your camp, which is easy to do if you believe in a system where you're chosen and special over other people. Now, unfortunately, that's eating of the tree of good and evil, the tree of separation. This versus that. Evil is live spelled backwards. It's that which destroys the good, and the good is opposed to evil because it doesn't know how to unify with it. That's the problem. Now, the esoteric approach is very different. It's focused not on the outer world out there, but the inner world in here. A lot more time is spent throughout your day not on getting stuff, but on trying to figure yourself out, to contemplate, to meditate, to try and build discernment, to try and penetrate into this symbolism of the world, to try and create unity and a synthesis. The idea is to have dominion over yourself and your negative tendencies, to take time each and every day to evaluate, how did you do? It feeds the capacity to create unity, compassion, and love. It creates a world of peace, the New Jerusalem, because you've taken the time to build your capacity to harmonize and to understand and to synthesize, not create the same kind of mush or stew, but to synthesize like the rainbow, to learn to respect and appreciate the differences, different people, different points of view, different races. They're harmonized together. Again, not by a mush where everybody's got to be the same. It's not uniformity, it's unanimity. It's not one form, it's unanimity, one all united like knights of the round table, willing to pledge themselves to this spiritual discipline of the tree of life, of learning to send the energy up the central channel so that we can maintain harmony and peace and have unity and diversity together and as one, not in separation, fighting one another. So Revelation has 22 chapters, and I covered the first 4 chapters in video 1. And the exoteric version is St. John goes into some sort of drug trip, weird mystical drug trip, where he enters a throne room with 24 elders and 4 weird looking creatures flying around, and in front of this man on a throne room. Usually it's a man. St. John doesn't say it's a man, but it's usually interpreted in the exoteric version as being a man. Gives 7 lampstands with 7 stars above it. And anyway, go watch the video. The esoteric version is St. John goes into a meditative state of samadhi and is asked by the divine, and St. John doesn't say it's a man, who will be able to open the 7 chakras and enter samadhi. Now, some later Bible versions have interpreted it as a man, but St. John calls it the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, not a quote man. Anyway, that's part of the video. Go watch it. The second video covered chapters 5 through 7. The exoteric version is St. John is given a scroll with 7 seals, and as they're opened, 144,000 people are sealed, put a seal on their forehead and taken up into heaven. They're the lucky ones. Now, there's versions that others are going to get into heaven too. That's not necessarily even the exoteric version of St. John, but we're just going to stick with this part so far. Go watch that video. Esoteric, the scroll is the spine. The 7 seals are the etheric centers along the Sushumna spine, central spine. And as the 7 chakras are opened, there are 144,000 points on the stars or petals on the lotuses of those chakras have been purified enough that they're opened, and therefore you have become saintly-like. You have the seal, the bindu, that represents different things in India. So don't get just the dot on the forehead confused. There's many different marks that you can put on your forehead. But anyway, the mark that you have here is one that demonstrates, whether you have a mark on your forehead or not, that you've opened the 144,000 points or petals in the proper way, and therefore you've purified your entire vessel. The lamb of sacrifice with the 7 eyes has seen the impurities in the 7 chakras, and the 7 horns of the lamb has sacrificed or taken those impurities out of each chakra, out of all of the 144,000 points, so that you've reached continuity of consciousness, and you are in the throne room, 24 elders, 7 chakras, 24/7. You're in the throne room. You reached Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Some call that Sahaja Samadhi. There's disagreements, but one version that I read says Nirvikalpa Samadhi is like Sahaja Samadhi in that you have continuity of consciousness 24/7. Whether you're awake or asleep, you are always in the throne room. You are always knowing yourself in your divine nature. Chapters 8, 9, 10, and 11 were in video 3. The exoteric version was some trumpet sound, and some destruction occurs as each trumpet is sounded. Then 2 strange-looking olive trees come out, and they prophesy for a certain amount of days that equals, coincidentally, 3.5. Go watch the video if you want to learn about all that and get the esoteric meaning, which is chakras. The 7 chakras are activated. We know each chakra is activated through sound. Watch that video. I give the sounds there. But a warning is given that if you have not purified your negative tendencies enough, then the dragon of kundalini will not go up the spiritual central channel of the tree of life, the Sushumna. It will go on the right and left channels of Ida and Pangala. And then as those chakras are activated, destruction is going to occur. Imbalances in your psyche, imbalances in life, not going to be good. So this particular video, yes, one video on just one whole chapter. The red dragon emerges and sends a celestial virgin with a male child into the wilderness. Actually, we'll see the male child goes to the throne room, the celestial virgin to the wilderness. But basically, I'm now going to focus on covering these chapters in videos 4 through 10. And the exoteric version of these chapters is how various battles now take place as those opposed to Jesus, or your interpretation of Jesus, arise to prevent the Lamb, who they associate with Jesus and don't see as separate from Jesus, will now rule over the earth. Those who did not follow Jesus, or your version of who Jesus is like, Jesus now becomes some super badass genocidal maniac who's going to destroy, along with his followers, anybody who doesn't follow him, pledge allegiance to him. And after that, if you haven't, followed them in the nick of time, I guess, after these battles, then 7 horrible plagues are going to be released upon you, and you may or may not make it into heaven finally in the end. That's exoteric version, as we will see as we go through these videos one by one. You're going to get, and it's very important that you do get, the exoteric version. Why? Because I'm in 2021 now, and if you really follow these videos, you're going to understand more than ever what's really playing out there in the world, because there are many people who are exoterically minded who are trying to make a World War III happen, who are trying now to turn Jesus into a genocidal maniac who's going to destroy the earth, who see the destruction of the earth as a necessary thing in order to save it. And you're going to understand why they don't believe in global warming and all these kinds of things. I really encourage you to get wise, because this stuff is real and it's really playing out in front of us, which is why I felt the esoteric version was important to get out there. Because what we will see in these battles is that it's not about out there, it's about in here. As each chakra inside of us is stimulated through sound, a battle takes place in that chakra. And if we don't successfully complete that battle and use the Lamb with its 7 eyes to see and its 7 horns to poke out the impurities in these chakras once and for all, then the unpurified contents of the chakras will spill out, causing further destruction and pain, which it's already doing on our world, which is why these esoteric disciplines are so important to understand and to follow. Which is also why I'm doing a more extensive video on each of these 7 battles. So the first battle, a red dragon emerges. A celestial virgin gives birth to a male child. The dragon tries to drown the virgin and child, but they are saved as the child is taken to the throne room, and the earth swallows up the river, and the woman is then taken to a wilderness and protected for 1,260 days, 3.5 years. Watch video 3. And once again, 3.5 has to do with kundalini. Here we go again. Also has to do with pi and a lot of other things. Watch that video. So here is a more detailed summary, as St. John gives it. A celestial virgin appears who is clothed in the sun, has the moon under her feet, has 12 stars as a crown. She is pregnant and in process of birthing a male child who is meant to rule all nations with a rod of iron. Then a red dragon appears with 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 diadems or crowns on its head, and its tail sweeps down 1/3 of all stars in the heaven and casts them down onto earth. Then it tries to kill a celestial virgin, or kill the celestial virgin, as she's giving birth to her child, wants to devour them. The child is saved and is caught up into the throne room, and the woman flees into the wilderness and is put in a place prepared by God where she is nourished for 1,260 days. And then a war arises in heaven. And Archangel Michael and his angels come down and fight the dragon, who is the devil and Satan the deceiver. And the dragon is thrown down to earth, conquered by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, for they love not their lives even unto death. But then the dragon gets all upset at Archangel Michael and all those, and pursues the woman, the celestial virgin, in anger by pouring out a flood of water out of its mouth to wash the woman away. And then the earth opens up and swallows the river. The dragon gets mad and goes and makes war on the rest of her offspring who did not bear testimony to Jesus. let's look at the exoteric interpretation of this story. Basically, it's all about the churches under persecution. The celestial virgin they see is the church. The 12 stars over her head are the 12 tribes of Israel. The male child is Jesus, who will rule all nations with a rod of iron. Sounds pretty ominous, pretty fierce, like a really badass disciplinarian. And the red dragon represents those who oppose Jesus and his church. Of course, when you get into different versions, it's going to depend upon which church, because there's some versions that we'll see in this series that say, well, Catholics pretty much aren't going to get into it, and a lot of Protestants aren't going to get into it. Only certain views of Jesus and certain churches are the right churches who are going to be the ones you've got to get into. And if you don't get into the right church, whether it's fundamentalist Christian or Mormon, or there's so many different sects of Protestant churches, Baptist or Presbyterian or Lutheran or whatever. If you don't get into the right church and follow the right leaders who have the right view of what all this means, then badass Jesus is going to come and take you out. So Archangel Michael and his angels then come and try to kill the dragon. The dragon, again, is devil and Satan the deceiver, but they fail. That is because the dragon can only be conquered by the blood of the Lamb, who is Jesus, and by those who follow his word, testify in his behalf, and are willing to follow Jesus even unto death. This is like a real warrior cult. If even Archangel Michael and his angels can't kill the badass dragon or the devil or Satan or Lucifer or however you want to name you want to give it to, if they can't kill that being, however they identify it, then it's up to us. We're the ones. Why? Because we're going to follow the blood of the Lamb, who is Jesus. The Lamb is now Jesus, who was sacrificed on the cross. The Lamb is not symbolic of sacrifice. The Lamb is Jesus, and it's up to us to follow his word, or whatever version of his word we're following. There's many variations to the Bible. There's many variations on the word. So you got to find the right person with the right word and use that word and testify and spread that word out and follow Jesus even unto your death. But the dragon hates you. The dragon is anybody opposed to your view of what Christianity is and to your leaders and their interpretations of Christianity. And so that dragon hates those believers and pursues the woman, the Christian church, and tries to get rid of her. But God promises he will save the church, the woman, by protecting it, keeping it somewhere protected until the war with the dragon is over, which happens at the end of Revelations. But this fact that the church is protected really pisses the dragon, those opposed to your version of Christianity, your leaders, and their view of whatever their view is of the Christian church, because they don't all agree. So you got to find the right one to follow. And the dragon then is going to try and kill you off. Now, this view implies that all that you must do then is be saved, be a member of a Christian church, hopefully the right Christian church, the right views of the Christian church, the right leader of your Christian church, and then proselytize about your Christian views according to your beliefs, according to your leader, and be brave enough to do that even unto death, as other Christian martyrs have. So you can see the war, the conflict, the fear about if you don't get in with the right version of Christianity, the right Christian church, the right Christian group, the right Christian leader. How do you know which one's right? And so much is at stake here, because if you don't get with the right one, then you're going to have be part of the group that's going to have all these horrible things happen to you. And you won't be, it's not in St. John, it's Revelation, taken up in a rapture, but it's thrown in there where you're going to be taken up in some rapture, or you're going to fight with some tribulation force and, you know, conquer and save and be okay in the end. A lot at stake here. It's a really heavily fear-based viewpoint. I like to summarize Revelations because if you put it all together, you start to see the whole system here, and you see how it's a yoga system. But let's look at the exoteric summary first. The church associated here is Pergamum, related to purgatory, that word. The church is the lamp, which in the esoteric version is the chakra. I probably should have taken that word out here in the exoteric summary. And St. John says that this church, Pergamum, held on to faith. If you conquer, he will come with a sword in his mouth, bring manna, and a white stone with a new name on it. I have some of the esoteric words in there. I should have taken them out. But the negative thing is this church is holding on to the teachings of Balaam or Baal, which we see especially in the next video with the beast, who taught eating food sacrificed to idols and immorality. Now, the horse pops out when the lamp, this first seal, is broken. The horse pops out. I better get my pointer for the rest of this video here. Here's the lamp with a star on top of it. That was given. The seal is broken on the scroll. The horse pops out and is given the power to conquer. Then an angel with a trumpet comes, and 1/3 of all grasses and trees are destroyed. Then, if these battles, you haven't won them successfully, a bowl is poured and all grasses and trees are destroyed. And here is a summary of the dragon. The church, the lamp, has become evil. The first seal of the scroll is broken. Horse and rider jump out, giving the power to conquer. A trumpet sounds, and 1/3 of all trees and grass are destroyed. A celestial virgin appears who represents the Christian church. She gives birth to a son who is Jesus Christ our Lord. A dragon who is Satan appears and tries to kill the virgin and a newborn child, meaning the dragon is trying to destroy Jesus and his followers, but it fails. The newborn child Jesus is taken up into the throne room for protection. A dragon then chases after the celestial virgin, the church, and her followers, attempting to drown them in a flood of water that has been released. But the earth swallows up the water. I don't know how they explain that part. And the celestial virgin is protected. The church is protected. Jesus and the virgin are safe for now, but the dragon continues to live and creates fear and chaos. Exoteric version. Here we go. First of all, it's important to understand the symbolism as birthing not necessarily Jesus, but the cosmic Christ, because the story really starts up in the cosmos. In the esoteric version, we see something quite different. Here, the celestial virgin stands for purified matter of our cosmos or solar system. And you have this not only in the Christian tradition, but you have it in religious traditions predating Christianity, especially as you go into the systems of Buddhism about 500 years before Christianity, Hinduism thousands of years before Christianity. If you go into a study of comparative religions, you see similarities in this symbolism. That is why here the celestial virgin stands for purified matter of our cosmos or solar system, depending on how far out you want to go. That is why she is clothed in the sun, has the moon under her feet, and 12 stars as a crown. So 2 views represent this. The first sees the virgin as the clothes of the sun itself. The 12 stars are the crown, that are the 12 constellations that form a crown or surround the celestial virgin, which is giving birth to the sun. She's pregnant with the sun, giving birth to the sun. And that will happen when the sun is aligned with Virgo and the moon is full in that sign in Pisces, where then the moon is under her feet. So in this particular graphic that I found, we had the moon in alignment with the constellation of Leo. Here we have the full moon in alignment with the constellation of Virgo. So what we're getting here on one level is a kind of cosmic time clock. When is there going to be the birth of a new sun? Whether it's a sun in a solar system or whether it's a sun representing a state of consciousness on our earth. There's a celestial time clock here. Stated another way, she's the purified matter of our solar system that is attempting to birth a new level of consciousness into our planet. In this view, that expansion of consciousness involves our entire solar system. The Christ then is a solar Christ, a sun Christ, or a sun Christ. Many different levels here. Looked at this time clock in another way. I actually got this one from a more traditional Christian site. The second view focuses then not on the larger picture, but brings it down into a smaller range, focusing only on the constellation of Virgo, the Virgin, who is part of the 12 signs of the zodiac found in the ecliptic, which we just looked at, and that should say how this constellation relates to our Earth. Virgo, the Virgin, is esoterically known to give birth to the Christ within the hope of glory. Now, the word Christ means anointed one. It is a title. Jesus was anointed. Jesus was a yogi. Jesus opened 144,000 points of the stars or petals of the chakras and entered the throne room and achieved continuity of consciousness 24/7. And that can happen to each one of us, as Jesus says, if we look for the Christ within, which is the hope of our glory as well. So again, this symbolizes an expansion of consciousness or an enlightenment experience. But this one is seeking out timed events that are more connected to our Earth and not necessarily our solar system. So all along, and we see this in different cultures, we're looking for timing events in the cosmos as above, so below, that we can associate with certain expansions of consciousness here on our Earth. Now here to the left, we see one theory mini representing how this might look. Now I thought this was interesting, that's why I wanted to put this in here. Now this view was saying one timing for this event may be September 23rd, 2017. And this person was arguing, this was a more exoteric person, but that's some cool ideas, reaching for more metaphorical understanding here, looking for the time clock theory. This view implies that at a certain time the sun appears to clothe Virgo with light. So here is the constellation of Virgo, and it says, like on this date, the sun is right here appearing to light up the constellation of Virgo. Appears to clothe Virgo with light when it is low on the horizon shortly before sunrise or right after sunset. So Virgo, the constellation, is dropping, and as it is dropping or as it is rising, sunrise or sunset, the sun on the horizon is lighting up that constellation. You with me so far? I hope so. And also at certain times when this happens, there are some times when the moon right here seems to be under her feet. Here is the feet of the constellation. Here is the, not quite the head of the constellation in this illustration. The sun is lighting it up at the same time when the moon in the heavens, actually can see it, appears to be under her feet. And then this particular person is arguing that there are three different planets that are also lining up: Mercury, Mars, and Venus. So you have Virgo on the horizon, the constellation Virgo. The sun is lighting her up at sunrise or sunset at a time when the moon is under her feet, and the planets Mercury, Mars, and Venus are all lined up above her head along with this person is arguing the stars that make up the constellation Leo, Regulus, and these 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so that's another version of this time clock approach. Now, both views, the one I showed you before, where it's more just simply related to Virgo and the as the sun, giving birth to the sun, and the constellations, the 12 constellations being her crown. This one has a different view. But both of them are looking for a certain celestial timing for when revelation takes place. Now, esoterically speaking, revelations doesn't just take place once upon a time in history. These expansions of consciousness happen cyclically over and over again. We saw that in the video when I was talking about the dragon as kundalini. That was video 3, and how kundalini is that coiled circular pattern that at certain times uncoils and starts to expand consciousness. So there are cyclical events that happen that can make these expansions happen faster. And if we're not prepared, then the contents within our chakras, in our bodies, or within the chakra points of the earth, etc., will result in chaos if it's not purified enough. And St. John talks about this too later in Revelations, when he talks about the dragon being thrown down and then 1,000 years coming up. We see again this cyclical kundalini dragon kind of pattern. So we can look at this battle as a time clock. And it can also indicate that when the timing happens, when these expansions occur, they activate the dragon or kundalini. And I said, as shown in video 3, this dragon is everywhere. It is the life force everywhere. It's the life energy, the life force. The force be with you. Kundalini, or the dragon, is the life force itself, and kundalini is circular in motion. It is coiled. We see that down here in this little picture. It's repetitive. It creates this status quo. It maintains, I should say, the status quo of everything, keeps it all in order. But when that status quo is challenged, that circular motion is challenged, then it's forced to expand and grow. And the dragon doesn't want that. It doesn't want to start to change and move upwards. It wants to stay static and keep itself coiled down here in its little cave, so to speak. And so the first thing that happens is when the purified celestial virgin, the new way of being, is going to give birth, the celestial virgin is going to give birth to a new sun, S-U-N, or way of being, then the dragon, the status quo, challenges that and tries to chase it away. And so this indicates that there's going to be a battle between the old and the new way of being. Now, ultimately, the new way will always win. But how will it win? As video 3 emphasized, it will win by splitting into a horrible battle of the Ida and the Pingala channels here and here. They won't crisscross harmoniously up the spine, the central column of Sushumna. They will go into a battle. Well, ultimately, the new way will win, but how will it win? Will it win through a lot of disruption and chaos and pain, going into the tree of good and evil? Or will it win by harmoniously finding a way to crisscross and create balance as it goes up the central column of the Sushumna? So key questions become important then. Here we have Draco, the dragon. Here we have Virgo, the virgin. Now, some say that this Corona Borealis is her crown. Some say this Serpens constellation is the fallen serpent versus the risen serpent. I was really fascinated with constellations when I was young, and I took time to learn 50 of them. And I was really into, I still have the book that I got out of the library when I was 12. Yes, I never returned that book. Shame on me. Hopefully, I'll be redeemed in heaven. I'll clean up that chakra point. But I love that book so much because it had a view of the mythology of all the constellations based on different religious traditions. The book's out of print, so I'm so glad I have it. And it's a marvelous book to be able to really understand the mythology of all these different constellations. Coming back to us and Draco the dragon and the celestial virgin or Virgo, key questions become important. How do we assess the timing of various expansions of consciousness in our solar system, on our earth, in our lives? Is there such a timing? Can we look for it and predict it? What do these expansions of consciousness entail? What kinds of battles are going to take place? How can these battles be avoided so more harmonious transitions can take place? Well, the interesting thing is, if you read St. John in an esoteric way, you see that he is attempting to illustrate this. And he does so by metaphor and symbol. And he's talking about a process that can be interpreted at many different levels. And we're going to look at some of those levels in Revelation. And as you see, in fairness, I'm trying to look at the exoteric interpretation as well as the esoteric interpretation. But what we're going to get into now is that there has to be a cleanup in all these different chakra points. We got a warning when the seals were broken, a little bit of negative contents that weren't purified spilled out, unless you were the 144,000, and then nothing negative spilled out. You had just all purity and you were sealed and went into the throne room. But if you have negative energy there and you haven't already had enough suffering when the seals were broken and a third of the contents of the negative contents were spilled out, well, here's our chance. Clean up our act, or all the negative contents are going to be spilled out in those bowls that are coming up. So the question of timing of events of various expansions of consciousness can happen at a cosmic, solar, planetary level, personal level, and it's too vast and complex for me to explore in this series of videos. I'll simply say that each expansion of consciousness seeks to establish what? Greater unity and harmony between disparate ideals, points of views, peoples, and more. It's not saying, yay, there's going to be a battle and one side's going to win and the other side's going to lose. Too bad for you. Make sure you're on the right side, or fear, fear, fear. It's not doing any of that. Expansions of consciousness are always going to happen. We're always going to be confronted with ideas that don't fit ours, points of views that we don't like, people that seem different that we might be afraid of. This is always going to happen, forever and ever and ever. How do we, whenever it happens, maintain unity? So, regarding the timing of events, I want to go back to Draco the dragon, because this is kundalini essentially within our cosmos. This here, by the way, is the river that comes out of the dragon's mouth and is spilt out here. By the way, this is Cygnus the swan, or the northern cross that the Christ is crucified on in some traditions. Cygnus the swan is the Paramahansa. The swan is that which dips down with great discernment and takes out anything that is negative and gets rid of it. So anyway, here's Lyra the harp, Cepheus the whale. Anyway, I won't get into all that. That's a fun course in and of itself. I will say here's Ursa Major, the great bear, and Ursa Minor, the little bear. And here's what's most important, we're going to get to in a moment, Polaris. Why is this cosmic kundalini? I'm about to show you. This dragon is also known as Draco, and what is interesting about this constellation is how it is so central in our galaxy that it literally represents the path of what is known as the celestial North Pole. Polaris is the North Pole. That's a fact. For thousands and thousands of years, we have navigated the waters and found our way by knowing where the North Pole of Polaris is. Well, what's interesting that I want you to see now, maybe I already did that animation, is that there is a rotation of Draco the Dragon that goes around this particular circle as it rotates in the sky, but always stays then within a larger, so to speak, pole. So here we have Draco the Dragon in its heavenly cave, so to speak. Now, St. John says the dragon that emerges has 7 heads with 7 diadems. That could be the crown of Corona Borealis, Corona's crown, as basically, see how it's connected? This is the path of the North Celestial Pole here. That's what this says. And this is Corona Borealis, the crown of the 7 diadems of the dragon or Draco. Now, what is this thing about, hang on, I'm kind of jumping around here. My mind's getting really active with a lot of interesting ideas. So let me read. St. John and those around his time would have been well versed with Draco and the nearby constellations, because on any clear night in Jerusalem or any other location north of latitude 31 degrees north, Draco is always visible. Here is Draco, here. There's Virgo, there's Draco. Draco is always visible. And it's notable that Draco rotates around the North Star every 24 hours. That's what I showed you in the previous video. The North Star was known by ancients to have been referred to as the throne of God. Polaris, the North Star, was the throne of God. The dragon Draco, as it rotates around in the heavens, goes around. Let's see if I can find here Cygnus, Ursa Major. So then the Polaris in this particular one would be out here, just to let you know where that red dot is. And it rotates around that throne room of Polaris out here every 24 hours. 24 elders in the throne room. Which leads me again to the curious statement of how the dragon with its tail removed 1/3 of the stars in heaven before it chased after the Virgin. Well, here we're referring to the cycle in time when Draco appears to have fallen under the horizon. So on a night time here, you would look out and you would not see all the stars that are in green. All you would see of Draco, here's its head, here's its body, is its tail. So its tail seems to have thrown down 1/3 of all the stars in heaven. And the Virgin, the Celestial Virgin, is now on top. And probably if I had a picture of the Milky Way galaxy, the sea, that we would also get a understanding of timing as the dragon let loose a sea, the Milky Way stream here that you see. If I went back to the previous picture, I had it there. I don't want to backtrack here, it'll ruin the video. But basically, you will see that has tried to chase away Virgo, the Celestial Virgin, this sign, and has failed. Now, some say that when this takes place, that there are pole shifts on our Earth, which would naturally cause the kinds of catastrophes and disruption that St. John refers to. So there are those that are trying to do an esoteric cosmology that say when Draco goes under the heavens at a certain time and the tail is up and throws 1/3 of the stars down, etc., that indicates a pole shift, and that would indicate the catastrophes. So that might be part of what's going on here. But as above, so below. So what is taking place in the heavens, St. John knows will also take place in ourselves. And so our ability to handle these shifts, whether they're pole shifts or shifts in our consciousness, or shifts in the consciousness of our solar system, or our immediate cosmos, whatever, these shifts are going to happen. And our ability to handle these changes comes down once more to how we handle not only the dragon outside of us in the cosmos, but the dragon kundalini inside of us. So here we have the dragon, and here up here is where the purified new matter is trying to be born. The descent of the kundalini energy is trying to give birth to the child in the cave or in the manger. And that then is going to release the energy upwards, for better or worse. It will release the dragon upwards. This is another kind of stream that flows upwards, for better or worse. And the sun will be held up here in the throne room, and the virgin will be, I don't know where this would mean that the virgin is kept in a desert here, except symbolically. I don't know where that would be in terms of the chakra system. I'll confess to not knowing that. However, there's another way to look at this, and that is that the energy of the virgin birth, the celestial virgin birth, happens within the manger or the cave of the brain, where the pineal and the pituitary glands sit that impact the Ida and Pingala channels. And that when that is born, the pineal gland is stimulated, which is why we have a big pine cone statue outside of the Catholic Vatican, symbology of the pineal gland, that when that is activated, then there are visions that happen and a new level of consciousness is born. So that's another possible way to interpret this. But it leads me to the next question of what do these changes entail and what kinds of battles will occur? And the specifics of this depend upon the era that we live in and what divisions exist within that era that need unifying when kundalini or expansions of consciousness take place. Which takes me away from the cosmos and back to where we live in the body, starting with the red chakra associated with the red dragon emerging. Interesting that there's red as an association here. Did St. John do this deliberately? Or is this just, quote, a coincidence? Remember as well that once the newborn child is taken up into the throne room for protection, or is possibly kept in that throne room for protection, either up here in the head center or within the cave or the manger within the brain cavity, the dragon chases the celestial virgin who is protected by the earth, the symbol of the Muladhara chakra. So keeping that in mind, let's take a look at some of the psychological features of the chakra and how it might stir up an opposition in between all of us. So, I'm not exactly sure on the mechanism. Maybe I'll get more clear as I understand the system more as I go. But certainly there is a descent of energy where the Christ child up here, the new level of consciousness up here, is descended down, and the celestial virgin gives birth to that, which then activates the old way of being, which then moves back upwards along the channel here and creates either a nice harmonious flow where you've opened 144,000 points or petals and you're a saint and there's no disruption at all because you're just have such mastery over your system, you can just easily embrace these changes with divine love. Or if you're human like most of us, it's not going to go so well. And there's going to be a battle that occurs along the way. In previous videos, I showed how the Muladhara chakra, also known as the base of the spine chakra or root chakra, is associated with the themes of security, stability, and feeling grounded or rooted in the world. When an expansion of consciousness takes place, it is like a birth, and any birth can cause tremendous insecurity and anxiety because birth and death are always connected. New and old ways of being always happen simultaneously. The old ways of believing, of providing security for ourselves, of feeling rooted and stable in our lives are now being challenged. And unless we have the yogic ability to remain stable inside ourselves, we will be thrown off balance when this occurs. We will split into the two polarities. The tree of good and evil will be activated, and the two channels of Ida and Pingala will fight each other, and splits will happen. And that's especially going to happen if we've had trauma and abandonment issues in our lives. If we have issues with feeling secure, issues with the security we have out there or the security inside of ourselves, then these changes are going to knock us off balance, and we're going to tend to be threatened, and we're going to tend to act like a dragon and want to attack whatever that new level of consciousness is that's arising. We are the dragon. If we split into the Ida channel, the feminine channel, now again, that doesn't mean it's women only. We all have Ida and Pingala. We all have male and female. And ideally, the Ida channel flows up well, that's the Pingala channel I just followed there. So this would be the Ida channel in this particular video, flows up and intersects here. Feminine is the moon right here, okay? If we follow that in the right kind of way, no problem. If we have difficulties there, then we will become helpless regarding our fears and the changes demanded of us. That means we'll be so afraid we won't know what to do out there. And we'll become, I'm speaking in a global way, which is not true of everybody, but feminine energy can become passive, it can become hysterical, it can become overly emotional in its trauma, or it can become kind of slumped and be a helpless victim in its trauma. So if these changes happen and that Ida channel is activated and we don't know what to do with it, we're going to have hysterical, crazy, like women coming out with lots of fear, asking their men to go fight and protect them, kind of a thing. Or we're going to have just a helpless, victimized, standing there with no ability to do anything about it and easily taken over with no sense of awareness of what's going on and a real learned helplessness. If we split off into the Pingala channel, the more masculine channel, then we're going to do the opposite. We're going to become aggressive. You're right. I need to attack. I need to defend. I need to go out there and prove my maleness. I'm not saying only men do that. Women can do that as well. Here, I'm going to go out and prove my femaleness there, and I'm just going to go out and, as with my male aggressive energy, I'm going to prove that I'm going to stand up and I'm going to fight and make sure these changes don't happen in an aggressive way or in a passive way is the point I'm trying to get out here. Both of those are in the tree of good or evil, activating this way. They're not going up the tree of life, the central channel, where we stay poised and we manage these two tendencies to become helpless or attack appropriately. So we no longer fear the changes. We learn to embrace them, creating a bond to both mother and child that is needed for progress to occur in a harmonious way. Let's just look at, anybody has a new baby. Big deal. Suddenly your life's changed. There's a baby you got to take care of. And hopefully you've got a nice, stable family and a harmonious relationship and loving relationship that you're in. And that baby is going to be well taken care of. It's going to be rooted. It's going to be secure. That child's going to have what it needs to thrive and not just survive in the world, to express the best within him or her. Unless that baby is born and maybe you didn't expect to have the baby, and maybe you wanted to abort the baby but you couldn't abort the baby, and maybe you don't have anybody to give the baby up to for adoption, and now you're saddled with taking care of the baby all the time, and maybe the male in your life or the person that was responsible for helping to take care of that child promised to do that with you, or helped create that child with you is going to be negligent and not want to help out with his or her duties. And maybe that person is not going to be a good parent. Or maybe that person's going to get mad at you for having a child and abuse you. Or maybe that person is going to neglect you and abandon you and the child. Or, or maybe you're going to die while you're having the child. And then the other person is suddenly has to take care of all of this. I'm just speaking about one thing, just having a baby. I'm not talking about levels of expansions of consciousness where the baby is symbolic of a new way of thinking, a new kind of people coming into town that you got to deal with, you know, a new culture or a new belief system. All of this is hard work. How do we deal with it in such a way that it doesn't create a battle? Well, here is the esoteric summary, and then we're going to follow with some questions to contemplate about how do we deal with it. So here we had the church, which is the chakra. Once again, St. John said it held onto its faith. There's a hint. Hold onto your faith, but not faith as allegiance, which is how some exoteric versions are saying, where you fanatically hold on to your old way of being. Hold on to your faith that you can, as you stay spiritually aligned with the throne room, the crown chakra, the brain, and above, your spiritual nature. Hold on to your faith that as you stand spiritually aligned, you will conquer. You will come with a sword in your mouth, which is discernment. And you will have the mana or the prana or the vitality you need, and a white stone. Not sure what St. John meant by that, so I haven't tried to interpret that, with a new name on it. Maybe the white stone is the purified stone, which has the new name that you're going to be given on it, the new anchor. Have faith that you can figure this out. The negative way is to hold on to the teachings of Baal. We'll get into who Baal is more in the next video. But that is where you move into just only believing in the world of the five senses out there, not going inward here to meditate, discern, contemplate, understand, be inspired, but go out there and glom onto whatever teaching or teacher you can because your fear tells you you have to do that. And so you eat food. Interesting, because food is associated with the Muladhara chakra, talked about in the different videos. Sacrifice to idols and immorality. Now that could be literally you've sacrificed your food to idols and immorality, but it can be symbolically that you're just saying, heck with it. I'm just going to go with whoever gives me comfort out there and believe whoever without discernment. The horse, as the seal of the chakra is opened and the star emerges, the seal, the star opened, the horse gives you the power to conquer. A third of the grasses and trees are destroyed as the trumpet is sounded and that chakra is activated. And hopefully, if you don't clean up the contents, when the contents of the bowl of the whole chakra is poured out, more destruction is going to occur. Let me go back here. If, when the seal opens, you learn the lessons that you need to conquer and purify yourself, when things are chaotic out there, it's not time to just become helpless or to do the opposite and to immediately go out there and conquer and destroy. It's the time to contemplate. It's the time to conquer and purify yourself, to go into that kind of contemplation there, where you are trying to understand, how do I remain centered, balanced, instead of creating enemies out of people, those exoteric people, those esoteric people. How do I see both sides? How do I put both sides in perspective and in the right proportion? How do I learn how to love and understand and have compassion for both sides? How do I learn how to speak with wisdom to both sides so it won't activate more fear? And if you do that, you become a loving steward of yourself, of your body, of your life, of your belongings. You expand your heart in such a way that you have understanding and you live simply so people can simply live. Then all is well. You don't have to have a third of the earth destroyed, a third of your body destroyed through bad living habits because you were sacrificing yourself to idols and immorality and eating and drinking stuff that wasn't good for you, basically. You learn the importance of purification. You're not afraid to take one of the eyes of the lamb and to see, and to take one of the horns of the lamb and to poke out things inside yourself that need to be seen and sacrificed. The lamb is sacrificed and poked out so that you're not greedy, so that you're not eating impure foods, so that you're not helpless, or so that you're not aggressive and fearful in your ability to create greater security and stability for as many people as possible. If you don't do that, then when the seal is opened, you are going to go into division and fear with those who don't agree with your views. You're either going to be too afraid and become helpless and destroyed, or you're going to go into a position of wanting to destroy them, to conquer them. You're going to become greedy. You're going to overconsume. And then our earth is going to suffer. And the body will suffer. And hopefully, we stop it here. That's what St. John is saying. Stop it here. Uh-oh, you're not doing it. Stop it here. Uh-oh, you're not doing it. Go through this battle and succeed, because if you don't, then the bowl is going to pour out its contents of the negativity in this chakra totally, which is the fear versus love, which is the insecurity, the instability, the lack of comfort, and the possibility of destruction not only of your body from bad living habits, but the entire planet if we're not careful. In summary, let's look at all the factors connected to this celestial virgin, and the dragon is connected to other themes in Revelation. A new level of consciousness is being born. The old way of being the dragon, or the circular motion of kundalini, wants to oppose it. As the first seal is opened, the first horse emerges to give us the power to conquer. The question is, have we followed the path of the lamb? Are we willing to make the necessary sacrifices to see and poke out our negative tendencies, to be overly attached to what previously gave us security, stability, and a sense of I amness? If we can do this, then we become loving stewards of the new. We will cherish the mother, our earth, and keep her pure and virginal, and our bodies as well, keeping them pure and virginal if possible. If we cannot do that, then we will oppose the new way of being. For St. John, that new way of being has to do with a new way of relating to our women and to our earth. They're not something to destroy, rape, pillage, exploit, control, and dominate. Women and our earth are to be cherished and respected because they are celestial. But if we fail to appreciate this fact, then the prayers of the saints in the throne room, video 1, or I think that was video 2, will not be answered. Instead of conquering ourselves, we will seek to conquer others. We become greedy, exploitative, and disregard our very connection to the mother, to earth, to women. In short, we end up threatening our very survival. End result, at first only a third of all grasses and trees will be destroyed. We're kind of seeing that in our world right now. And there are those who act like they don't care. Why? Because they think that it's their right to dominate the earth and destroy the earth and subjugate women. And that in the end, all's going to be well because they're going to get raptured up into heaven somehow. But from the esoteric standpoint, the newly emerging Christ, Krishna, really interesting, that relates to somebody who was around a long time before Christ, or Krishna, or Buddha or Buddhic consciousness that wants us to make new expansions and unifications will not be able to touch our hearts and change our minds. That newly emerging Christ expansion of consciousness will not be able to touch our hearts and change our minds. We will remain greedy. We will not learn to live simply so others can simply live. We will disregard the plight of our earth or our physical bodies or the bodies of others around us. We won't care. Instead, we are seen in light of, well, who needs to be conquered and what needs to be destroyed. And we overindulge and we overconsume. The more warnings will be given, going over to here. If we do not wake up, then as we will see, instead of a third of the unpurified contents of the chakra impacting us in a negative way, all the unpurified contents of the chakra will impact us negatively when the entire bowl of the chakra spills out. And foul and evil sores come upon us in the way of obesity, diseases, deprivations, plagues of all sorts. We will then remain entrenched in the old, attempt to fight off the new, and suffer horrible consequences because of it. It doesn't have to happen. We can still access the tree of life and move up the central channel of Sushumna. Let's reflect. So while I do this reflection meditation, I like to hide myself as we go through the rest of this video. I'd like you just to contemplate some of these different questions. Number one, how do I treat my body? Do I understand I have a need to purify it so that my brain, organs, nervous system can perceive things correctly when the energy here is activated? Do I see how 1/3 of my body and eventually all of my body will become degenerated, and the birth of that Christ consciousness will not be able to take hold within me if I do not keep working on purifying, as the virgin is in the desert, needs to purify herself, of toxins and other substances? So how do you purify those toxins and substances that you can take those out of your body so they no longer hinder your ability to keep giving birth to the Christ energy within you, so that Christ energy is not aborted in birth or killed when it is still young? So what purifications might need to happen? How can you generate the motivation? You start cleaning up your body, remove those toxins, so that the virgin is able to become and maintain its virginity, so to speak, its purity, and the Christ child can be born within the brain and the body. How do I treat the substance I take from the earth? Do I have too little, making it hard for me to have access to resources so I can really serve in the world? It's a problem of the Ida channel being overly activated, even fear. You don't know how to go get what you need to be able to birth that Christ-like energy within you. Do I have too much? Bengala channel. Am I hoarding what I have and not sharing it? Am I failing to properly take care of it? Are you treating not only the substance of your body, but the substance you take from the earth, your material possessions? Having too little or too much, hoarding it, not taking care of it? What can you do about that? Am I caught up in a material worldview that distorts any spiritual teachings so they become a form of spiritual materialism? Cause me to believe the goal of spiritual life is to divide and conquer others instead of conquering myself, so I can learn how to unify with seemingly opposing people or points of view in a harmonious loving, and Christ like way. Thank you so much. If you want, you can write those questions down, or you can take more time to really contemplate them. But I hope that this video is opening up for you the idea that maybe it's a good thing to see these battles as a thing within us and not without us, because it really is essentially important. Our planet is going through a major new expansion of consciousness. We're birthing a new Christ like way of thinking and being. And if we don't learn, go up the central channel so that we can do the inner work and maintain that unity, then good things aren't going to happen. So let's hope they do. Thank you so much. Again, I'm Dr. Lisa Love. If you want, please support this work. Subscribe to this channel or like this video or become a Patreon. There are gifts for you if you become one. Here's the link, patreon.com, Wise Productions. Thank you so much.